came to the club on the 28th of February. I handed him the card, which he read, and seemed distraught at the content.
Oscar Wilde, posing sodomite.
The Marcus's spelling is somewhat unusual.
From a letter to his friend Robert Ross, written that night.
Dearest Robbie, something has happened. Posey's father has left a card at my club with hideous words on it. I can see nothing but a criminal prosecution. My whole life seems ruined by this man. I don't know what to do.
From Oscar Wilde by Frank Harris, an account of their meeting at the Cafe Royale.
Oscar, meet me at the Cafe Royale tomorrow with Bernard Shaw at 3 o'clock.
George Bernard Shaw.
Wilde came in and told us the story of the conflict. He finished by saying that he was taking the Marquis of Queensberry to court.
I am bringing an action against Queensberry, Frank, for criminal libel. He is a mere wild beast.
Oscar, you must not do anything of the kind.
My solicitors tell me that some of the things that I have written will be brought up against me in court. Now, you know all that I have written, would you? In your position as editor of the Fortnightly, come and give evidence for me, testifying that Dorian Gray is not an immoral book?
Yes, I am perfectly willing, and I can say more than that. I can say that you are one of the very few men I have ever known whose talk and whose writing were vowed away from grossness of any sort.
Oh, Frank, would you?
He was almost in tears.
It would be most kind of you. Your evidence will win the case.
Anything I can do, Oscar, I shall do with pleasure. But I want you to consider the matter carefully. An English law court is all very well for two average men who are fighting an ordinary business dispute. That is what it is made for. But to judge the morality or immorality of an artist is to ask the court to do what it is wholly unfit to do.
My solicitors tell me I shall win.
Solicitors live on quarrels. Let us begin by putting the law courts out of the question. Don't forget that if you lose and Queensberry goes free, everyone will hold that you have been guilty of nameless vice. The Crown could charge you with gross indecency and send you to 2 years hard labor. You must know that could happen. You could go to prison for 2 years.
Frank.
You must remember you are a standard bearer for future generations. You are an artist and a revolutionary. If you lose, you'll make it harder for all writers in England. God knows it's hard enough already, but you will set back the hands of the clock by 50 years.
Well, what should I do?
You should go abroad. And as Ace of Trumps, you should take your wife with you.
You're right, of course, Frank. You know it is Bosie who wants me to fight his father.
Let Queensberry and his son fight out their own miserable quarrels. They are well matched.
Oh, Frank, how could I do that?
I think it was about this time that Bosie Douglas came in.
The day of the lunch at the Cafe Royal, I was very anxious that the case against my father would proceed, and I resented any arguments in favor of its abandonment. I was terribly afraid that Oscar would weaken and throw off the sponge.
At Oscar's request, Harris repeated the argument, and to my astonishment, Douglas at once said,
"Such advice shows you are no friend of Oscar's."
What do you mean?
He turned and left the room on the spot, and then Oscar got up and said,
It is not friendly of you, Frank. It really is not friendly.
and then he too left the room.
I turned to Shaw and said, did I say anything in the heat of the argument that would have offended Oscar or Douglas?
Nothing, not a word. You have nothing to reproach yourself with.
I stormed out of the restaurant because I feared I might not be able to convince you and Mr. Shaw, and that you would argue Wilde out of the state of mind I had gotten him into.
You reptile!
Once Douglas left, I was suddenly struck by a sort of likeness. A similarity of expression and of temper between Lord Alfred Douglas and his unhappy father. I couldn't get it out of my head. That little face blanched with rage, the wild, hating eyes, the shrill voice, too, was Queensberry's.
You're no son of mine, and I never thought you were.
One thing was clear from our meeting. Lord Douglas had set his mind on Wilde prosecuting his father. It seemed as if he knew exactly how that was to be done.
Sir Edward, you must put me in the witness box and allow me to testify against my father.
From the autobiography of Lord Alfred Douglas.
If not, we might as well throw off this case at once.
Make your mind at rest, Lord Alfred. I agree with everything you say. My idea of the way to conduct this case is to launch out at the very outset with a deadly attack on Lord Queensberry for his behavior to his family, of which we have ample proof in his letters to you.
Yes, but you must promise faithfully you will put me in the box.
I promise you I will. You shall go into the box immediately after my opening speech.
From the
published memoirs of the trial by Sir Edward Clark.
I made no such agreement or promise.
A warrant for the arrest of Lord Shelton Douglas, the 8th Marquess of Queensberry, was issued the next day.
In his plea of justification, the Marquess has said that the statement is true and that it was written for the public benefit. In support of that statement, he puts forth the following proof. First, that Mr. Wilde published, or caused to have published, the magazine The Chameleon, relating to persons of unnatural habits. Second, that Mr. Wilde published, or caused to have published, the indecent and immoral book, The Picture of Dorian Gray.